Hey everyone, today we are going to go over how to enter a rental transaction into the service program if you use a 28-day billing cycle, and more specifically a 28-day billing cycle in which all of your customers are on their own 28-day cycle, which means if they were to rent an asset from you on January 1st, you may bill them up front in advance, and then they would receive an invoice every 28 days thereafter. What we're going to do here in the service program is click Rental Info and then select Enter a New Rental. From this screen, we can go ahead and select a customer. I'm just going to select John Doe. And in a previous video, we talked about parents and jobs and the importance of using them in the service program in QuickBooks for customers that would be renting assets from you at multiple locations. So if you need to get some more information on that, you can always refer back to that previous video. But when I selected John Doe, you'll notice it loaded the billing address here. It also preloaded the shipping address from QuickBooks, which is nice. The next thing that we can do is begin to add the items to the rental transaction for which they are renting. So right along the bottom here, I'm going to hit this drop down for item, and we're going to go ahead and type in portable toilet rental. And for this example, we'll assume that John Doe is renting 2 toilets from us. Instead of adjusting the quantity here, I'm actually going to go ahead and add the line item a second time. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then the last thing that I need to add here is a delivery charge. So if there's any additional charges, like a winterization fee, delivery charge, you will want to add those to the rental transaction as well if it's a new transaction that you're entering and it's not something that's already been on rent for quite some time. From there, we can now head to the right and input a serial number. That is if we are tracking or we plan on tracking our rental inventory through the service program. We can associate a serial number with each asset. So go ahead and select 2 random serial numbers there. And you'll notice the reason why I didn't just simply adjust the quantity to 2 on the portable toilet rental item was because then I would not be able to tie 2 serial numbers to that line item. You can only tie 1 serial number to 1 line item. So if someone's renting multiple assets from you and you need to take into account tracking your rental inventory, you need to add those assets as their own separate line items on the transaction. Now, if you are not tracking your rental inventory through the service program, you can adjust the quantity. You just won't have a serial number selected, and that's fine. It's not required. You'll also notice that this default price of $100 loaded. That can be adjusted. So pricing is 100% controlled in the service program within a rental transaction. Maybe you charge John Doe a little bit more, maybe you charge John Doe a little bit less for the asset. You can absolutely adjust the price. At this point, I'm fine with leaving it at 100, but I do want to adjust the delivery fee. For today's example, we'll just say that, hey, it costs $50 for us to go out and deliver the units. So we'll go ahead and input 50 there. Next thing that we want to do is take a look at the columns to the right here that say prorate and run once. Now, if you bill on a 28-day cycle and you bill in advance, which is very common in the rental industry nowadays, it's not necessary to prorate because you're going to bill them up front for 28 days. As soon as you enter the rental transaction, get it into the system here. So we don't need to send them a prorated invoice. They'll receive an invoice for the full amount. If you bill in the rears on a 28-day cycle, then you may want to prorate. We'll talk about that in depth when we get into the next video, which is going to discuss billing. But for today's example, we will not mark off prorate on these charges. The next column says run once, and we actually do want to fill in that radio button for the delivery line item for run once. What we're doing is telling the system that, hey, we only want that delivery charge to appear on the first invoice. So the column adjacent to the run once column is the date run column. Now that's a column that you will never manually input any information into. What's going to happen is when we go through generating the first bill from this rental transaction, or the first invoice, once that invoice gets posted over to QuickBooks, any item that is marked as run once, the system will input the date that you sent the invoice to QuickBooks in this date run column. That's how the service program knows going forward that it no longer needs to bill for delivery on following invoices. The next thing that we can talk about here is the delivery date. This is obviously the date that the unit is expected to be delivered. For today's example, we'll go ahead and select May 1st. So across the board, I will select May 1st as the delivery date for each line item. Now subsequently, you'll notice that the billing start date adjusted to the day of the delivery date, which makes sense. If you're going to be delivering the toilet on May 1st, you're probably going to start to bill them on May 1st. Now, what's important to point out is that the delivery date does not have an impact on billing in our software. Only the billing start date does. So if you're entering a rental transaction, if you're a new customer and you're entering a transaction for an asset that's already been on rent for a long period of time, you may not know the delivery date. That's fine. It's just mostly there for your knowledge. But the billing start date is very important to input that accurately, especially if you're billing on a 28-day cycle. The billing start date for anything that's been on rent should be the day after whatever they've been billed through. So if they've been billed through the entire month of April, that billing start date needs to be May 1st. If they've been billed through April 28th, then the billing start date should be April 29th. So our billing increments by default are set to monthly. Sometimes customers get confused there because obviously monthly does not necessarily equal 28 days, but in our software it does. It doesn't have an impact. We can set the number of days on the billing screen for what this monthly billing increment equates to. So we're just going to leave it at monthly at this time. We don't have to worry about any of the other fields here to the right. So after we have our delivery date and billing start date, the next thing that's important is to input a billing group. And this is going to be one of the most difficult things to understand. If you can grasp this concept right here, then I have confidence that you'll be able to really hit the ground running with the service program. This is about as difficult as it's going to get. But basically, if you bill on a 28-day cycle and each customer is on their own 28-day cycle, then we need a way to differentiate or to classify which transactions are part of which day within that cycle. So if it's a 28-day billing cycle, you would have 28 billing groups. Now, whatever month you decide to start using the service program for entering rental transactions, it's going to be very simple to match up the billing group with the billing start date. So for example, this transaction here, we have the billing start date as May 1st. So for the billing group, I'm going to input the number 1. When I do that, the system is going to tell me that this billing group is not in the list. Would you like to add it now? We are going to select yes. We'll say, would you like to update John Doe with this billing group? We'll select yes on that as well, because obviously that is what this transaction or who this transaction is for. Now, at this time, we can go ahead and begin to create all of the different billing groups for each day in the cycle. So once I've input the number 1 here, we can double click in the billing group field. that will open up our rental billing group maintenance screen. And from here, it's as simple as labeling a group for each day in the cycle. So we would do this 1 through 28. So we'll just take a moment here to fill out all this information. All right, so we have our 28 different billing groups. We don't have to worry about any of the other fields here over to the right. We can simply input 1 through 28 and then click close on this screen. And let's talk a little bit more about the billing groups because it can be confusing. How I got this number 1. The easiest way to do it is to open up a calendar. So I'm going to open up my, or an Excel spreadsheet. Actually, either would work. And I have an Excel spreadsheet here that I am going to show to you so that you can see how this works. So for this particular Excel spreadsheet, column A has the date of the year. Column B has the corresponding billing group that that transaction would belong in if the billing start date was the date over here in this column. So as you can see for March, and this spreadsheet starts at 3/15, but if it started with March 1st, you would see March 1st, and then the billing group would be 1, and then March 2nd, and the billing group would be 2, and then March 3rd, and the billing group would be 3. So for the month of March, everything lines up until we get to March 29th. So as you can see right here on March 29th, so if the billing start date is March 29th, if someone rents an asset from you on March 29th, the billing group becomes March 1st. The billing group becomes billing group 1, the same billing group that the March 1st transactions would be in. Someone rents an asset from you on March 30th, the billing group becomes billing group 2. So the way that this operates is you have 28 days in your cycle, and those billing groups just repeat 1 through 28. So again, the first month is very nice. Everything matches up. And it doesn't matter where you start. If you start in March, May, December 1st or December 28th, it's going to be 1 through 28. But then once you get to the 29th, you now repeat billing groups. So you now start again at billing group 1, 2, and then the 30th would be the 2nd. And if there's the 31st, it would be the 3rd. And then when you get to the 1st of the following month, it would be the 4th billing group, and so forth. So this is a nice spreadsheet, and we can provide a spreadsheet like this for you guys. If you just reach out to us, we'll send you one. And this one goes from March 15th all the way through the end of the year. And it's a nice reference. So on December 4th, if someone rents a portable toilet or a dumpster or whatever it may be from you, you can simply look at that 12/4 date and then look at the billing group that corresponds to it, 27. There's not much thinking beyond that. You would just select billing group 27 within the rental transaction. Now, to take another step further, to try to explain to you how this works, the best way to do it is to look at a calendar. So what I am going to do here is, let's take a look at the service program here. And we can actually pull up a calendar so that you can visualize this right in the service program. So I'm going to click task info and then select schedule view. This will pull up a calendar in the system. Really what I'm focused on is looking at the dates over here on the left-hand side. Now, this is an area that you probably will rarely use if you are a rental company. But again, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is for you to visualize how these billing groups work. So let's talk about May, because that's what I use for today's example. And I said that on May 1st, that the customer would be in billing group 1. And we can see their first invoice would go out, and then they would receive another invoice 28 days later. So the next billing start date would be May 29th, which is 4 weeks after the first on a Wednesday. So any customer that would rent an asset from you on the 29th, they would be billed on the same day, and then they would be in the same cycle as that customer. So again, it makes sense. If they rent an asset from you on the 29th, they're in the same billing group as the individual that rent an asset from you on the 1st. Because eventually, the customer that rented the toilet from you on the 1st would be billed again, and their billing start date would become the 29th. So then both customers would be billed again thereafter 4 weeks, which would be June 26th. So as you can see, they're truly on the same cycle. And that's across the board. If you look at May 2nd, they're always going to be billed on a Thursday. This every 4 Thursdays, anyone in billing group 2 is going to be billed, just like anyone who would be billed or anyone who rented an asset from you on May 30th. That is also a Thursday, and they're going to be billed every 4 Thursdays. So they're all going to align on the same cycle. The best way to think about this is you don't want to get caught up with the day of the month and just assume that's the billing group. And that's an issue that customers sometimes find themselves in. For example, May is an easy one to point out. If someone rents a toilet from you May 1st and you put them in billing group 1, you know that the individuals in billing group 1 are going to get billed every 4 weeks, which of course will always be a Wednesday. So if you made the mistake of inputting someone that's renting an asset from you on June 1st in the same billing group, you'll notice that June 1st is a Saturday. So that would be a completely different cycle. We've already established that billing group 1 is going to contain all customers that are going to be billed every 4 weeks on a Wednesday. So that it's not possible for a customer to be billed on a Saturday in a 28-day cycle within the same billing group. So hopefully I did a better job explaining that with the calendar view here. I'm going to close out of that. And as you can see, when I close the calendar view in the service program, it also takes us back to the task list. But we have a nice little breadcrumb trail. I can click rental transaction. That will bring us right back to this screen. So we went over billing groups, why they are important for billing. And if you have any more questions or if you'd like a copy of that Excel spreadsheet, absolutely reach out to us, customersupport@westrumsoftware.com. Send us an email. That'll create a ticket in our system, and then from there we can further explain or provide you with that spreadsheet. The last step on creating a rental transaction here is to get the delivery and the service, if there is one, on the route schedule. So this column all the way to the right, we have a select route field. We can go ahead and select that drop down, and we'll go ahead and click Joe. And then where it says select frequency, well, this is a new transaction, so we need to account for the delivery first. So we'll select delivery, We already know that the delivery date is May 1st, so we'll go ahead and select May 1st. And then once we have these parameters input, we'll go ahead and click that red exclamation point. And it will say, would you like to put the customer on the route schedule? We'll select yes. The next step here is to put the first service on the schedule. So maybe Joe is our delivery guy, but Josh is the guy that's going to be doing the services on the PTs. So we'll select Josh as the route. And for frequency, we're going to flip that from delivery to weekly, because this John Doe customer is going to be receiving a weekly service. And the service date is going to occur 1 week after the delivery. So we'll go ahead and select the 8th of May. And then again, we'll click the red exclamation point, and that will put the service stop on the route schedule. Now, if you're entering rental transactions that have already been on rent into our system, you don't have to put the delivery on the schedule. The delivery has already occurred. So at this point, we've handled accounting for the billing of this transaction by having an accurate billing start date, having accurate pricing, having an accurate billing group. We've accounted for the delivery and the service. We went ahead and got them on the route schedule, and I can show you that. If I click the route schedule button in the top left toolbar, we should now see our delivery on the schedule and our weekly service, and we do, which is nice. So at this point, we're finished with this transaction. We can click close. If for whatever reason we need to head back to that transaction, along the top toolbar, there's a button here that says items rented. You can go ahead and click that. That will open up this screen right here. You're going to notice a line for every line item that is included on that rental transaction. If we need to get back into that rental transaction for any reason, all we need to do is double click the invoice number, and that will open up this transaction. So the next step to this, of course, is billing. So stay tuned. The following video here, we're going to talk about how to run billing for a transaction such as this.